What's up, everybody? So I scored another Marshall 415 cab. I'm not really sure what we're going to find inside of this one, so let's take a look and see what we can do to make sure this thing is running and make sure it's in tip-top shape. Just looking at it at the face value, we've got an 11-inch logo. Looking at these water spots here, it looks like this thing was in a flood, but let's turn it around and see what's going on in the back. We've got a little bit of cloth damage here and here. This kind of looks like maybe Cat used it as a scratching post or something. Could have been hitting mic stands or whatever. This stain here looks like maybe it was in a flood or something. That's kind of what I thought from the photo when I first looked at it. And it's definitely been kicked a couple times because it's ripped the cloth off the front baffle here. I do have this cloth in stock if we're going to recover it, so that's not a big deal. They still make this pattern, so we can make this thing look completely original. Alright, on the back, one of the casters seems like it doesn't want to move. We'll get into that later. Back panel is original. There was only one screw in it when I got it. Jeez. Oh no. That's never a good sign. Just covered in insulation. Why? I'm pretty sure Marshall didn't do that. This is usually some kind of half-ass attempt at trying to get it to sound muffled. We gotta get all this insulation out of here because this is not gonna make it sound any better. Yuck. And we'll have to clean all this stuff out. But we gotta test the speakers too. And, oh yuck. And if you look at the bottom here, you see that this thing did encounter some water damage. So I do want to take these speakers out and check it, and also check all the wood and make sure that that's in good shape. Well, I'm going to pull most of this insulation out, and I'll get the rest of it out with a vacuum and an air compressor, but I'll take the speakers out first. Yeah, you know it's not original because these are all stapled. It's all stapled in. If it was original, the staples would probably have a little bit of rust on them. Could be wrong, but I doubt it. Oh, it's always so great about these flathead screws is the fact that if they're tight, sometimes you'll slip and you'll stab an irreplaceable vintage speaker. And none of this stuff was wired when I got it. It was already clipped loose. I mean, with all the insulation, like I said, it sounds like somebody made an attempt at trying to make this thing sound more bassy, but with these speakers it's probably not going to happen. It looks like a fairly small magnet. Oh man, I don't want to lose that sticker. And I have not seen these speakers before. They look similar to a G12M, but normally I would see this gasket on the front side. So far so good. Now the G15Ms that I usually see in these cabs do have an aluminum dust cap cover. It is not separating. Alright, let's get the other ones out and we'll test them all. So these bottom screws have definitely rusted out. I don't know how I'm gonna get them off. Oh, it's turning. That screw. Alright, so that broke off in the T-nut that's in there. Not the worst case scenario, but to fix that we do got to get the grill cloth off, which is a decent excuse to remove it. Damn, we might have to get the whole baffle out just to get these speakers out here. Alright, we are moving into full restoration mode on this thing because this front baffle does not want to come out. And I can't get the speaker out unless I take the baffle out. and I've already got the handles out, and I'm already committed to replacing the grill cloth. So I'm pretty close to just doing the whole thing. I mean, we can get it, we'll get this thing right, and we'll get it good. But man, I wish I didn't have to do all this stuff. A lot of steps in the deconstruction of this got missed because the battery of the camera died, and when you're right in the middle of a project, you don't want to stop and be changing out camera batteries, so I just didn't film that. Here's the front baffle that came out, and it is fucking disgusting, but there's a lot of mold on here from the flood damage, and unfortunately you can just kind of see how it bends like that. All the laminations on the plywood have started to come apart, and it was also a huge pain in the ass to get the speakers out. But we are going to put this aside because I can use this as a template to make another one. I actually have a reproduction front baffle in the shop because I have a prototype that's been sitting over in the corner for about a year because I'm going to be making 415s, and I want to make them exactly like the Marshall spec ones. So this one was a perfect fit. I've got it in here now so I can get all the hardware off, and I have to smack a couple of these things with a hammer to get all these rivets out. So I want to have something in here to brace the cabinet so it's not rocking side to side and busting these corners out, which so far the wood of the actual cabinet itself is in great shape. None of those laminations have come apart at all, which is fantastic because that would have been a real bummer if we would have had to bust this whole bottom apart. You can knock these cabinets completely down and redo all the finger joints and everything, but you know, that's a whole nother level of difficulty that I'm glad we don't have to get into. I've already got the casters off the bottom. I didn't film that whole process. These are the brass colored Homa casters. You'll see these on this era of cabinet. There are some gold, there are chrome, silver ones as well. I believe it's just painted. And half the time they don't spin very well anymore. And these flathead screws, even on the plastic ones, are sometimes damn near impossible to get out. So this one's probably going to have to sit in an ultrasonic cleaner to get it apart. I don't really know if they're worth saving. For practical purposes, I'm not going to put these back on the cabinet. I'm going to fit this up with modern Marshall casters and caster plates. I'll probably hold on to these as spares and maybe see if I can fix them back up, but I don't really see the point of them going back on the cabinet. I've got every part to redo this in stock except for these caster cups. So I'm going to have to reuse the ones that are on this thing. All the corners and everything, I've got brand new ones, so we can redo all the corners and everything. There's a couple that are a little cracked and beat up, so since we're going to redo all the covering and everything, might as well make it look brand new. So to get these out, you just want to be really gentle because you don't want to crack the plastic. As long as I can get it to pop out just a little bit, I can use this to get it the rest of the way. So you just pop it gently. And most of the time I won't pull it all the way through the plastic so I won't damage it. This is what I mean by having this baffle in place, because as I'm hitting this with a hammer, if you rock this side to side, it's going to stress all the corners and the joints and everything, and I don't want to put any additional stress on this, on these finger joints, because they will pop loose. I managed to remove this piece from the front baffle. I've got it pretty much centered up here, but this is the piece that the logo sits on, and it's already got the holes drilled in for it. So rather than trying to remap them out, I can use this as a template, which is great to save us a lot of time. It's getting dark and it's cold outside, and before I get into the recovering of this thing, I really need to get this baffle drilled out, get all the T-nuts set, because I got to paint it with the T-nuts in. Otherwise, you can see the reflection of the chrome through the grill cloth. Alright, ready to take this outside and paint it black. The piping's been pulled off and saved for later. Now it's time just to remove all the covering here. Alright, well, everything's got a fine layer of dust on it. I've been sanding this thing for quite a long time, but the results are worth it. Ain't looked that good since the day it left the factory. So we have all of the glue residue off. Nowadays, as far as I know, Marshall sprays adhesive on, but back then they brushed this stuff on. We are going to spray it because I don't have any brush on glue at the moment. So it's all off, and I wanted to make sure that it all comes off because I don't want any adhesion problems. I don't want to leave like a little bit of glue and then you have a fine layer of dust or something on it and the adhesive doesn't stick to itself or something like that. Because any little bubbles or rolls and wavy spots, they're really hard to fix once you get the Tolex on there. And in some cases, you can't fix it other than rip it out and start over. So you can still tell there was a little bit of damage here from water, but it looks a hell of a lot better than it did. That is for sure. I'll be able to cover up some of this with the Tolex here. And I don't want to paint it. That's kind of a cop-out. But it would be nice if I could get rid of that all the way so you can't see that. It looks worse, and it looks worse than it is. It's still solid, and the only damage to the actual cabinet, this finger joint up here is a little soft, but not even enough to where we need to clamp it. We're just going to put a little bit of glue down in there. I can push on it with my finger, and I can barely make that move. So right here, it's just, we're really lucky because it's just one layer of ply that's coming up right there. And that's so little that, yeah, I can just shoot some wood glue in there, stick something on top of it overnight. We'll be good to go. And that finger joint has a little bit of there's a little play right there. I don't know if you can see it. It's not really even that much to be worried about. Once the cabinet's together and all the front and the rear baffle is on, it's going to be a lot less stress on this joint. I'm going to take a hammer and see if I can pop it. So that's not bad at all. So we have the joints separated enough that I could get a lot of wood glue in there. I have no idea how YouTubers do this every day, like film themselves working, because this is aggravating. Got the Tolex here. I've already cut it to length. Throw them on this table and get started. So I'm testing the speakers now. This one looks like it's an original cone, and it's hovering right here at about 7 ohms, which would mean it was a 8 ohm speaker. Now, this one, on the other hand, has a different cone. That one looks old and dusty. This one looks new. This one, I actually played a little smoky amp through it just to test it out. Sounds old, sounds vintage, sounds nice. This one sounds bright, modern. So let's go ahead and put an ohm meter on here. You gotta clean up these terminals because they are a mess. So that's great. This one is reading 11.8, which means that some reconed them and didn't bother to make sure all the impedance matched. It's hard not to be upset about something like that. Like, that's the biggest head move you can possibly do when you're working with something vintage, antique, rare as shit. Why? Let's try this one. 7.4. So these two must be original. Here is another one that was reconed. Oh, would you look at that? 11.8 ohms. I'm gonna have to just pull them loose and recone them again if I want them to match. I mean, for one, they don't sound anything like this one. Right, so that's that one. And when I hook it to the other one, alright, so I'm about to start wiring everything up. Sorry I did not film me mounting the speakers or the baffle, but there's a lot of stuff that goes into this, and it's taken me a long time, so trying to follow myself around with this camera is not easy. Since we've redone all this, at the Marshall factory they sign them before they leave the assembly line for the QC. And since we've got our own front baffle installed here, I think it's only appropriate that we get to sign it. So up here, I will put, well, down here. I've got the original jack plate. I do have reproduction jack plates of these smaller plastic ones. They're 3 screw holes instead of 2. And I saved the original screws, so I'd like to reuse them. Next part's just boring. I gotta find all the screw holes and drive screws in it. Here's something I'm pretty excited about. The serial number tag is in one piece, and they use the same staples to mount that as they do the piping and everything, so I was actually able to save 2 little tiny staples. So we can put this right back where it came from. In theory. Now it is going to be a little bit different because in the stock version of these cabinets, the jack is on the bottom. But I mean, we've got a non-original front baffle and 2 non-original speakers and some non-original hardware, so why not make it work for actually playing shows? Being at the bottom means you have to have a longer cable. I don't know. I don't like it. But anyway, let's see if we can drive these little staples down in here. So this cabinet is going to get used, so that's why I'm not going to bother with trying to salvage those Homa casters. You know, those things are worth something, and I'll probably use them maybe on another restoration project. But for this one, no. Oh, I didn't even realize that these came with instructions. And I don't know how they could make this any more clear, because I hear a lot of people complain, oh, well, these Marshall casters with the plastic sockets, they suck, they just ruin out. These instructions say the exact same thing I've been saying forever. These wheels, just like every other wheel on every other guitar cabinet in existence, inside only. When you go outside, pick it up. Don't wheel it across the sidewalk, not the concrete, not the asphalt, not the gravel, but pick it up and carry it. That's what they're for. Inside only. They are interior wheels. They are not exterior wheels. When we tour with big bands, you know, I've got big 4-inch casters on a lot of these giant road cases, and they have to be replaced all the time, because when you're playing festivals, you have no choice but to wheel that stuff through gravel and dirt and outside, and you know, when you don't really have the right place for your semi to park, alleyways, stuff like that. But all of this stuff, no, man, pick it up. Pick it up. Put it on a furniture dolly. Just that alone will save years and years of life on these casters. I mean, they should last forever if they only roll inside. Bam. Perfect. All right, now we make it official. So here's our refinished cabinet. Now I opted for the metal handles on the side. I like that a lot more than the plastic. Reuse the caster cups. I've got new corners on the front and the rear. I managed to save the original serial number badge and use the original staples to put it in place, although I did reverse the orientation of the rear baffle. Normally this is going to be on the bottom. Did have a lot of trouble with this cloth. The problem is the dimensions of the cloth are almost the exact width of the face of the front of this baffle here. So it was really, really tricky to get it to be covered on all sides. I think I did the best with what I got. It's a little crooked, you know, you can see it here and here. They don't exactly line up. I might be able to straighten that out, but it was a huge pain to work with this cloth because of the size difference. They don't make the cloth in the large enough size to cover the baffle. I mean, it's hanging on by a thread, literally, in this outside piece. If we look at, I've got 2 other 415s here And the cloth dimensions were way larger. And when you take the baffle off, you can actually see where it was cut and folded on the inside. Unfortunately, that's going to be really, really hard to do or replace on a 415 nowadays. And if we look to my left, I have another 415. This one I believe is a 77 or 78. I can't remember off the top of my head, but this one has the G15V100 speakers in there, which I'm not sure that this would have come with check. It might have come with black cloth originally, but this was recovered, and whoever did this one definitely had that same difficulty, although I managed to get it a little bit better because you can see this is part of the baffle, and the cloth, they couldn't get it to stretch over the baffle to get pinched in there. So it appears that they wrapped this one from the top to the bottom. I think I did mine the other way around and went from side to side. So my tops are barely in there, but his sides were barely in there. So, but all in all, they did a great job on this one too. Aside from the cloth, they did pretty much everything the same way I did, but they used new pieces for this. These are new rivets, new caster cups. I used the original caster cups and the original rivets for those, which that doesn't bother me one way or the other. I think that's fine. I do like that it does say Marshall on it. These should be Marshall corners. They do make reproduction corners that by other manufacturers, but they're a slightly different size or thickness, I should say. But these appear to be genuine. They did use genuine Marshall plastic handle, which you can hear that kind of, that tap there, that might vibrate. They did use screws that were a little bit larger than I think we're supposed to. I'd rather have the metal handles on here, and I'll probably replace those too. They did the baffle in the period correct orientation to where the jack is on the bottom. They did not screw in anything for the center brace, which a lot of the original ones did not have that screw. I'll do an in-depth demo on this one at some point, but for now, let's listen to this one.